My daughter, Lauren, had always been the kind of person who carried herself with a quiet strength. Growing up, she was the kid who'd climb the tallest tree in our backyard, not because she was reckless, but because she knew she could. She'd analyze every branch, every foothold, before making her move. That same calculated confidence followed her into her career with the FBI, where she'd risen through the ranks to become a tactical commander in the hostage rescue team. At 32, she was one of the youngest in her unit, leading operations that most of us only see in movies, raids, extractions, crisis negotiations. She didn't talk much about her work, not because it was classified, though plenty of it was, but because she didn't need to. Her presence said enough. Lauren had come home to Willow Creek for a rare weekend off. My wife and I had moved to this community a few years back, drawn by the promise of safety, order, and a place where neighbors looked out for each other. It was the kind of neighborhood where kids rode bikes until dusk, and the HOA sent newsletters about hedge heights and approved paint colors. Lauren, who'd grown up in a rougher part of town, always teased us about moving to what she called suburbia Disneyland. She'd roll her eyes at the HOA meetings we dragged her to during her visits, where folks debated mailbox uniformity with the intensity of a courtroom drama. But she loved running through the neighborhood's winding paths, earbuds in, zoning out to her music. It was her way of decompressing from a job that kept her on edge. That Saturday, Lauren laced up her sneakers, threw on a black tank top and leggings, and headed out for her usual 5-mile loop. She'd been staying with us for a couple of days, catching up on sleep and dodging my wife's attempts to set her up with nice boys from the neighborhood. It was about 3 p.m., the sun high but not brutal, with a light breeze rustling the oak trees lining the streets. Most folks were inside watching college football or tending to their lawns. Lauren liked these runs because they were predictable. Same houses, same sidewalks, same overly friendly golden retrievers. Predictable was a luxury in her world. What wasn't predictable was Tom Hargrove. Tom was the HOA's self-styled security coordinator, a title he'd given himself after volunteering to lead the neighborhood watch. He was a retired car salesman in his late 50s, broad-shouldered, with a buzz cut and a penchant for wearing cargo vests stuffed with flashlights, a walkie-talkie, and, apparently, a concealed handgun. The HOA didn't have an official security team. Willow Creek wasn't exactly a hotbed of crime, but Tom had taken it upon himself to patrol the streets in his golf cart, eyes peeled for suspicious activity. He'd been known to lecture kids for skateboarding on sidewalks or hassle delivery drivers who lingered too long. Most neighbors tolerated him. Some even liked the idea of an extra set of eyes, but others, including me, found him overzealous. Lauren, who'd met him once at a community barbecue, had pegged him as a wannabe cop with too much time on his hands. Lauren was about 3 miles into her run, cutting through a quiet stretch near the community's back gate, when Tom's golf cart rolled up beside her. She didn't notice him at first. Her earbuds were in, and she was focused on her pace. Tom, however, noticed her. To him, she was an unfamiliar figure, running fast, dressed in dark athletic gear, with a small hydration pack slung over her shoulder. Maybe it was the pack, or the fact that she wasn't waving at him like most neighbors did, but something set him off. He sped up, pulling the cart onto the sidewalk in front of her, forcing her to stop short. Lauren pulled out one earbud, catching her breath. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone polite but clipped. She wasn't one for small talk, especially not mid-run. Tom climbed out of the cart, his hand resting on his hip, close to where his concealed holster Saturday. "You live here?" he demanded, squinting at her like she was a suspect in a lineup. His walkie-talkie crackled on his vest, though no one was on the other end. "Yeah," Lauren said, keeping her stance relaxed but her eyes sharp. "I'm staying with my parents. House on Maple Drive." "Got ID?" Tom pressed, stepping closer. He was a big guy, maybe 6 feet 2 inches, and he had a way of using his size to intimidate. Lauren, at 5 feet 7 inches and lean from years of training, didn't flinch. "I'm jogging," she said, gesturing to her outfit. "No, I don't have ID on me. I'm Lauren Carter. My parents are Jim and Ellen Carter. You want to call them?" Tom's jaw tightened. He didn't like being questioned, especially not by someone he didn't recognize. "We've had reports of strangers coming through the back gate," he said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who thought he was the law. You don't look familiar. Lauren raised an eyebrow. I've been coming here for years. Maybe you just haven't noticed. That was the wrong thing to say. Tom's face reddened, and he took another step forward, his hand now hovering over the grip of his pistol. Don't get smart with me, he snapped. I'm in charge of security around here. You need to show some respect. Lauren's training kicked in, not the part where she could disarm a man in 3 seconds, but the part where she read people. Tom wasn't just posturing. He was escalating. She could see it in the way his shoulders tensed, the way his fingers twitched near his holster. She'd faced down armed suspects in far worse situations, but this wasn't a hostage crisis or a raid. This was her parents' neighborhood, and the guy in front of her was a civilian with a gun he clearly didn't know how to handle responsibly. All right, she said, raising her hands slightly, palms out, to de-escalate. Let's calm down. I'm not a threat. I'm just running. But Tom wasn't calming down. Maybe it was her tone, or the fact that she wasn't cowering, but something pushed him over the edge. He yanked the pistol from his holster, a 9mm Glock, Lauren noted instinctively, and pointed it at her chest. Don't move, he barked. I don't know who you are, and I'm not taking chances. For a split second, Lauren's world slowed. She'd been in situations like this before, but never in a place where she was supposed to feel safe. Her pulse stayed steady. Years of training had wired her to stay cool under pressure, but her mind was racing. This wasn't a terrorist or a cartel enforcer. This was a middle-aged man with no business pointing a gun at anyone, let alone her. She could have disarmed him before he blinked, but that would have meant escalating a situation she still hoped to defuse. Put the gun down, she said, her voice low and firm, the kind of tone she used when talking down a suspect. You don't need to do this. Don't tell me what to do. Tom shouted, his grip on the gun shaky. You're not in charge here. By now, a few neighbors had started to notice. Mrs. Delaney, who lived across the street, was peering through her blinds. A couple walking their dog paused at the corner, whispering. Lauren caught their movement in her peripheral vision but kept her eyes on Tom. She knew the stats. An untrained person with a gun was more likely to make a bad call under stress. Tom was stressed, and he was untrained. Bad combination. I'm going to reach for my phone, Lauren said slowly, keeping her hands visible. I'll call my dad. He'll vouch for me. Okay. Tom hesitated, the gun still aimed at her. No phones, he said. You stay right there. Lauren's jaw clenched. She wasn't scared, she'd stared down worse, but she was angry. Angry that this man thought he could play vigilante in her parents' neighborhood. Angry that he was putting her in a position where she might have to act. She didn't want to hurt him. She didn't want to reveal who she was either. Lauren kept her job low-key, especially around Willow Creek. The last thing she needed was the HOA gossip mill churning out stories about the FBI agent in their midst. But Tom wasn't backing down. His finger was too close to the trigger for her liking, and she could see the sweat beading on his forehead. You're coming with me to the gatehouse, he said, gesturing with the gun. We'll sort this out there. That was her line. Lauren had spent years learning how to control a situation without force, but she also knew when words weren't enough. In one fluid motion, she stepped to the side, closing the distance between them faster than Tom could process. Her left hand shot out, grabbing his wrist and twisting it upward, forcing the gun to point at the sky. Her right hand pressed against his elbow, locking his arm in place. Before he could react, she swept his legs out from under him, sending him to the ground with a thud. The gun clattered onto the sidewalk. Tom gasped, more shocked than hurt, as Lauren pinned his arm behind his back. Stay down, she said, her voice calm but commanding. You're done pointing that thing at people. Mrs. Delaney's blinds snapped shut. The couple with the dog was now filming on their phone. Lauren sighed. So much for keeping a low profile. It took about 10 minutes for the local police to arrive. By then, Tom was sitting on the curb, nursing his pride more than any bruises. Lauren had secured the gun, unloaded now, magazine in her pocket, and was standing a few feet away, arms crossed, looking more annoyed than shaken. The responding officers, A pair of young guys from the county sheriff's department recognized her almost immediately. One of them, Deputy Ramirez, had trained with her at a joint FBI local law enforcement exercise a year back. "Agent Carter?" Ramirez said, eyebrows shooting up. "What the hell happened here?" Lauren gave him a tight smile. "Just out for a run." This guy decided I looked suspicious. Tom, still on the curb, started sputtering. "I'm the security coordinator." She attacked me. "I was protecting the neighborhood." Ramirez looked at the Glock on the ground, then at Lauren, who was still in her running gear, hydration pack slung over her shoulder. "You pulled a gun on an FBI agent," he said, almost laughing. "Man, you picked the wrong day." The other officer, Deputy Klene, was less amused. He cuffed Tom and read him his rights, citing brandishing a firearm and assault. Tom kept protesting, saying he had a concealed carry permit, that he was just doing his job. But the deputies weren't buying it. Pointing a gun at someone without cause wasn't exactly covered under neighborhood watch duties. I got the call from Lauren while she was still at the scene. My wife and I rushed over, hearts pounding, to find her giving a statement to Ramirez. She looked fine, better than fine, really. She was in control, her voice steady as she recounted the incident like it was just another day at the office. Which, for her, it kind of was. But for me, seeing my daughter in the middle of this mess, with neighbors gawking and a gun lying on the sidewalk, it hit hard. This was supposed to be a safe place. A place where she could let her guard down. The fallout was swift. The HOA held an emergency meeting that night, and Tom was stripped of his self-appointed security title. Some neighbors defended him, saying he was just trying to keep the community safe, but most were horrified. The story spread like wildfire, partly because of the couple's video, which hit the neighborhood's private Facebook group before dinner. By Sunday morning, it was on the local news. HOA volunteer pulls gun on FBI agent in gated community. Lauren hated the attention, but she handled the interviews with the same calm professionalism she brought to everything. Tom faced charges, misdemeanor assault and brandishing a firearm. His concealed carry permit was under review, and the HOA was slapped with a lawsuit from a neighbor who argued their negligence in letting Tom play security guard created a dangerous environment. Lauren didn't join the suit. She didn't need to. She'd made her point on that sidewalk. For weeks, the neighborhood was divided. Some saw Tom as a victim, a well-meaning guy who got in over his head. Others saw him as a bully who'd finally met his match. My wife and I leaned toward the latter. Lauren, for her part, didn't care much for the debate. She was back at work by Monday, leading a training op in Quantico, as if nothing had happened. But something had changed in Willow Creek. The HOA rewrote its bylaws, banning any kind of armed patrols by residents. They hired a professional security firm, one with actual training and accountability. The newsletter stopped talking about mailbox colors and started talking about de-escalation training and community trust. Lauren's name was whispered in awe at the next few meetings, though she refused to attend. "I'd rather run," she told me, smirking. Looking back, I'm still shaken by how close it came to disaster. If Lauren hadn't been who she is, trained, composed, lethal when necessary, that encounter could have ended differently. Tom didn't know he was pointing a gun at an FBI tactical commander, but that's the thing about power. It's not just about who you are, but what you choose to do with it. Lauren chose restraint. Tom chose ego. And in that moment, on a quiet street in suburbia Disneyland, the difference was everything.